welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 482, and today's date is October 2nd, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government and CDC are not disclosing everything about Ebola. Now, I don't know if you've seen this already, but on the corporate media, there was this man, he's a doctor, he was dressed up in a hazmat suit at an airport, and he is saying, yes, the CDC is lying. And we can see what's happening right now. We've had this man who was in Liberia, and there's a lot of different stories floating around this individual, and he has pretty much come in contact with many people, and it looks like the number keeps growing. You know, he was in contact with 30 people, he was in contact with 80 people, he's in contact with over 100 people, and we're looking at the CDC and the U.S. government, and they're looking at the situation, and they're saying, you know what? Yes, we understand he was in contact with all these people, but we don't feel it's necessary, and we don't believe that any of these people are actually infected. And this gives you some type of sense of where they're going with this and what they're trying to do. And again, they use all these numbers and all these computer models to scare the public. Now, of course, as we can see that Ebola is a virus that is wreaking havoc in West Africa right now. And of course, all the bordering countries, those seem to be fine, and we really don't see any cases outside of that area. But we've had this man who flew like pretty much all around the world and then eventually ended up in Dallas, and we're going to talk about what has been going on with this person and what the government isn't really telling everybody. Let's get into the economic collapse news right now. Now, we understand that the economy here in the United States and in Europe, it is completely imploding on itself, and there's no stopping it at this point. Yes, they can print money, or I should say currency. They can manipulate all the numbers, but eventually what happens is that all of this comes to a screeching halt, and the real economic indicators take over, and they can't fake it anymore. And people start to realize that, you know what? I'm around 10 people and 6 of them are out of work. There's something wrong here. So we're starting to see that August factory orders, they have completely missed. Now, last month, they were pretty much up by 10.5%, you know, hitting all records and stuff like that. August, it seems like they're down negative 10.1%. This is the biggest drop on record. So what are we seeing right now? They're continually manipulating numbers, and when the real information comes in and they can't manipulate it anymore, the numbers are completely down. And we're starting to see this with retail sales, because they're trying to use automobile, which is included in retail. They're trying to pump that up any way they can. Real estate, where they had hedge fund and investment companies buying houses in cash, they're trying to get out of the market, and we see housing completely tumbling and falling. And we're seeing that other indicators show that prices are starting to come down. The acceleration is stopping. We are seeing all of this because what's happening is the economy now is showing signs of collapse. This is why the OECD, the World Bank, are all out there telling us and giving us warnings that the economy is on track for a collapse. Even the ECB is out there and saying we have major problems. Countries are looking at the situation and they're saying, you know what, we cannot implement any more austerity. France is saying this, saying, listen, things are getting really bad. I know we have a lot of debt, but you know what? We cannot put more people on the street. We'll have no revenue coming into the government whatsoever, and it will just collapse the entire economy. And we see the youth unemployment across Europe and here in the United States is completely skyrocketing. And the youth, again, is the backbone to the next generation. And if they're not earning money and they're not saving, they're not spending in retail and saving for a house, this entire system is going to completely fall apart. But of course, President Obama is out there, and he is telling everyone how great the economy is doing. Obama says economic progress has been steady. It is real. You just can't feel it, so you're going to have to take my word for it. I know you're out of work and you're out of work and you're looking for work and you just got laid off, but believe me, the economy is really doing well. Obama says economic fairness is defining challenge of time. Yes, there's a huge amount of inequality where the 1% are getting very wealthy and pretty much the rest of the country, wages are not going up. People can't find the same pay in jobs. People can't find jobs. So yes, this is a big problem. Obama says Obamacare has restrained health care premiums. Well, this is not what we're hearing all across the country. We're hearing in many, many different states that health premiums are skyrocketing. Why? Because they were depending on the youth of America. You know, those people that took out student loans, went to college, can't find a job, working part-time, and they're looking at the health industry and saying, listen, I can do without health insurance right now, and most of the people are not getting into it, and this is a huge problem for Obamacare, and this is why you see premiums going up. Of course, whatever he's been saying in the past is always the opposite. Hey, remember when he said Ebola? We have nothing to worry about. It will not be entering the United States. Well, again, he was wrong. It's the opposite of what he said. Obama, U.S. can shore up finances without mindless austerity. Yes, you mean print money continuously? Until when? Oh, until you start that war, until you have that event to cover up this entire collapse. And we can see this is exactly what's going on. Now, other countries around the world, they're taking precautions. They're not waiting for the dollar to die. And what we're seeing is the Chinese renminbi is now directly tradable with the euro. The Chinese Central Bank, People's Bank of China, issued a press release announcing the authorization of direct trading between the renminbi and the euro on the interbank foreign exchange market. The European Union is already China's biggest trading partner, and this is a major step in further increasing trade and investment ties with the EU, as there is now a direct exchange rate between the two currencies without the need of the US dollar, completely bypassing it altogether. The renminbi is quickly marching down the path of internationalization, as the Chinese currency is now directly exchangeable with the US dollar, Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, Japanese yen, British pound, Russian ruble, and the Malaysian ringgit. So we can see as time has gone on, China has made deals, bilateral trades with all these countries. There's many more. They've set up clearinghouses. They're setting up their gold exchange, their stock exchange, and they're getting prepared. And we can see right now that Russia and Iran, they're going to boycott the U.S. dollar in bilateral trade. Russia and Iran have agreed to use their own national currencies in bilateral trade transactions rather than use the dollar, which pretty much bypasses the sanctions completely because it has nothing to do with the dollar. And they can trade in any other currency. They can either barter, which they've been doing, or trade in gold. And this is why, since 1979, the U.S. has had sanctions on Iran, and they went from 1979 up to this point, and the sanctions really haven't worked. And they've always been getting around them. And again, there is always a way around everything, and these countries have figured it out. And just as a side note, the U.S. still has sanctions on Cuba. So, and Cuba still exists. They're still working at it, and they still have an economy. Now, we understand that Obamacare is falling apart, really, because they expected the youth of America to pay for the older generation. And this is how they worked out the entire system, where the upcoming population would buy into Obamacare, get on the exchanges, take these health insurance packages, and this way all of these people would pay for the older generation. But what's been happening is the youth of America and the middle class right now, they're not even getting onto Obamacare. They'd rather take the penalty right now because they're saying it's way too expensive. And if you really look at Obamacare, the premiums are quite high, but the deductible is also quite high, especially a family deductible, and you need to meet that deductible before insurance even pays out. So if your family deductible is, say, like $5,000, you have to go to the doctor, pay out of pocket until you reach $5,000, and then the insurance companies will pay out. Now, if you go out throughout the whole year and you don't use the deductible, or you use only half, it starts over the next year. So basically, you're going to be spending a lot of money for health insurance. But what's very interesting about all of this is that We understand Obamacare has a bailout clause to bail out the insurance companies if they're not making enough money from Obamacare, just in case, the youth of America aren't buying into the health insurance. The middle class is saying, listen, I'm unemployed. I can't do health insurance right now, so I'm going to bypass this. I'll take the penalty hit right now. And we're starting to see that they're getting a little bit nervous, and they might want to activate that bailout clause inside of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. And the Government Accountability Office says the administration can't bail out the insurance companies without the permission of Congress. Congress doesn't have to go along with this. They need to vote on this, and they have to gather the money from the profitable health exchange insurers to help prop up the insurance companies. Now, of course, as we've seen in the past, Obama has a pen and a paper, and he usually does what he wants without conferring with Congress. But at this point, he needs to go through Congress to get the money to bail out the insurance companies. So we'll have to see as time goes on if he just pretty much bypasses Congress and does it himself, because lately Congress has been doing absolutely nothing. They have not been standing up for the people whatsoever. Now, we understand the White House is broken into. The man jumped the fence, made it across all the sensors in the lawn, made it past 1,200 Secret Service men and women, got past the snipers on the roof, made it to the front door, and actually went inside, I do believe. And we're starting to see that they're taking precautions now where they're set up that buffer zone in front of the White House where they pushed another fence about 12 feet away, might even go further. But what they decided to do right now is put a panel together to pretty much look at the threat towards the White House. The U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, has announced he would form a panel of experts to carry out a review of the White House security to see what other things they need to do, and understand they're doing this because they're preparing for what is coming, and they realize people need to be kept out of the area, and this one person totally was let through all of this to get to the front here. And we can see right now this was done on purpose so they can pretty much say, listen, we have security problems. We need to put up barriers. We need to put up fences. We might even have to look at all the government buildings because we might have to protect what is going on here. The panel's findings are to be announced on December 15th. The official explained that the panel's main focus will be on the White House grounds, but also noted the experts might provide recommendations regarding wider issues. And we can see that they are definitely preparing to do something here. What that is, we will have to see, but I can see you're going to see bigger fences, more security around all government buildings. Now, with Ebola, we understand the man who came to Dallas, his name is Duncan. Basically what he did, he took a 28-hour trip from Western Africa. He flew on 2 airlines, took 3 flights, and had lengthy airport layovers before reaching Texas on September 20th. So he went all over the place. And still the federal officials say that, you know what, there's no risk of infection. He's been in close quarters in a plane, and you know how it is when you take a plane. You can barely move. People touch everybody. And he took 3 different flights with 2 different airlines, and there is absolutely no problem whatsoever. So now the reports are out there saying that the American Ebola patient who he's been in contact with is up to about 80 to 100 potential cases in Texas, and maybe even one in Hawaii. Now, in Dallas, the parents are very nervous about this, and they're listening to the news, and they're starting to yank kids out of school. And inside school, what they're saying is that nobody is touching each other, nobody is shaking hands, nobody wants to even be by anyone, and everyone is saying, get away from me, and they're very nervous about what's going on. And this is something the government actually would totally like. We saw what happened in Ferguson, where they tried to gin up riots all across the country so they could declare martial law. This is just another tactic where they're trying to push this right now. And you can see by the actions of the U.S. government and the CDC. And even a CDC spokesman, he's out there saying, listen, screening is really inadequate right now because, we screened Eric Duncan and he didn't show any type of sign, so we can't catch everyone, and there might be a lot of infected people all around. And the White House is out there, and they're saying, yeah, there's no Ebola travel restrictions right now. You can still fly everywhere. It's fine. You can even go to Liberia. And the borders, we're going to keep those wide open at this point in time because we want as many illegals to come up. If they have Ebola, so be it. It doesn't really matter. And you can see they're really not taking this very serious whatsoever. Now, Liberia, they're sitting there and they're saying they're going to prosecute Eric Duncan. Why? Because he lied to them, because they have to fill out questions before they get on a plane, and pretty much the question was, have you been near anyone that was infected? And I'm assuming that he answered no to this, but what is happening here is they're saying that yes, he did help someone. He helped a pregnant woman get into a cab who was infected with Ebola to help her get to a treatment facility. And this is what they're going off at, right now. Now, there are additional details that are coming out right now about Eric Duncan, or Thomas Eric Duncan, and his voyage to the United States. Before coming to America to visit his family, Duncan worked at FedEx, from which he was dismissed, and after which he decided to, leave Liberia and then make this trek around the world. Now, was this done on purpose? Because this seems very suspicious with this entire story at this point. Now, yesterday I reported on that they were able to do experiments with primates where they could have the airborne Ebola virus go from one primate to another without touching, and the other primate did get it. Now, Canadian scientists have shown that the deadliest form of the Ebola virus could be transmitted by the air between species. In experiments, they demonstrated that the virus was transmitted from pigs to monkeys without any direct contact between them. The researchers say they believe that limited airborne transmission might be contributing to the spread of the disease in some parts of Africa. What we suspect is happening is large droplets that can stay in the air, but not for long. They don't go far, but they can be absorbed in the airway, and you can be pretty much infected with Ebola. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that there was a public tweet from a large government supplier of emergency response products specializing in high-risk events. Says the Disaster Assistance Response Team, "We're told to prepare to be activated in the month of October." The shocking revelation that when this came out, what made on the Gold State Fire/EMS Twitter page suggests that not only did someone know that the Ebola virus would be reaching America, but that they knew exactly when it would happen. What we are now hearing is just the tip of the iceberg as we enter October. DART teams were notified months ago they would be activated in October. And this seems kind of weird because we had the first case of Ebola here in the United States. Now, we have to remember there were Ebola cases. They were flown up to CDC to be examined. I don't know why they brought Ebola into the country, why they couldn't do and bring all their equipment down to that area, but they flew one of the patients here. This is the first confirmed case of someone getting off a plane having Ebola. The fact that the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Disease is involved suggests that either the Ebola virus or the vaccine or both have been weaponized at this time. So it seems very interesting, and we know the Department of Defense was involved in developing Ebola. They don't really know the source of Ebola. They have never found it. And we also have to remember the president, if you remember a couple months ago, updated several executive orders over the last months and years, and one of them was forced quarantines and roundups in the event of a pandemic emergency, and the appropriation of private resources like food, water, and human labor, and also to quarantine those people who have respiratory problems. So we can see that all of this is starting to come together right now, and what we're also seeing is that major government supplier of emergency equipment has come out in the open. like I said, that claim that they had some knowledge that something was going to go on, and they were activated for October. And this is all very interesting that all of this is starting to come together. Now, I do not believe in coincidences. Most of this stuff is completely planned, and we're starting to see that, yeah, it is planned. Now, yesterday I did mention that I purchased colloidal silver, and I've gotten so many emails telling me that it's not going to help, it's only for bacteria, why waste your money? And what's very interesting about this, and there's many different documents that are coming out from this, and a lot of them are coming out and then being removed. But one of them I have on the X22 report site. I put it up there under Resources Documents. It's from the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, where they did test with silver nanoparticles, and they were able to neutralize the hemorrhagic fever virus structure, especially with Ebola. And they've done these tests. The doctors are listed on the document. And what is also very interesting is that the World Health Organization recently blocked multiple shipments of nano silver solution measuring at 10 parts per million from entering the region in West Africa. World Health Organization officials also reportedly called off a trial at an Ebola isolation ward where local health authorities were set to begin administering the silver, which the U.S. government previously demonstrated is highly effective against Ebola. Authorities blocked small shipment of nano silver 3 times now. According to the Natural Solutions Foundation, efforts to ship nanosilver into Sierra Leone have thus far failed. The organization has been trying to deliver a shipment of 200 bottles of nanosilver, and guess what? They keep getting returned. They don't want them to enter the country. We also understand that Nigeria was going to do some tests with nanosilver, and all of a sudden that was stopped. So we're starting to see strange occurrences where the government doesn't want anyone to use any other type of treatments, especially silver. And this gives me an indication that they realize that this might have an effect of stopping the Ebola virus inside of you, and they don't want people to find out. There is no other reason why they would stop this, because if you took it and nothing happened, they wouldn't care. They would let it all go down there and say, see, we were right. We told you it doesn't do a thing. But now I'm starting to believe the actual opposite, that this is going to be very, very important as time goes on. Now, as we know, the U.S. is trying to collect the debt from Argentina. There was a court ruling, and of course Argentina and the debt collectors, they didn't come together, and we can see Argentina is now making deals and working with the BRIC nations. China's pumping in billions of dollars into their infrastructure. Russia's doing the same. And the president of Argentina, she came out and she said that there's a bigger problem. And she's saying the relations with the U.S. have hit rock bottom, and she says Washington may even want to get rid of her, where she's saying that they're trying to build something up to remove her. And we see this happen in many different countries. They try in Venezuela, they did it in Ukraine, they did it through the Middle East, they're doing it in China right now, and she's out there saying, if something happens to me, nobody should be looking to the east, but to the north, to the United States, to the central bankers. And she said earlier that she received threats from the Islamic State. And again, who controls the Islamic State? That's right, Israel, U.S. government, UK, other Arab nations, the central bankers. And we can see right now this is exactly what's going on. Now, of course, she's not abiding by the court ruling. She has made a deposit of $161 million in interest payments. This is something that was owed, but of course the debt collectors want to take all of it, and she's trying to show good faith by paying the interest payment. And again, they don't want this. They want the full amount. They want their money. But what's very interesting, after she said the United States government might be looking to take her out, the central bank governor, Juan Carlos Fabriga, resigned from his position of the central bank in Argentina. So maybe he's getting a little bit nervous, and he is getting out right now. Okay, now, in Nigeria, where The government of Nigeria said, listen, the leader of the Boko Haram terrorist group was an imposter. They pretty much showed that the real leader died in 2009, and then there's been other videos of other leaders coming up saying, no, I'm the guy, I'm the guy. Well, in the corporate media right now, what we're seeing is another video that came out saying, no, I'm still alive. I am the leader of Nigeria, the Boko Haram terrorist group, and basically contradicting everything that the Nigerian government has said. Now, again, the Nigerian government said, listen, if there's another imposter, we will kill you if you're trying to do this. And a lot of the Boko Haram followers have surrendered to the Nigerian government. But what we can see now is the U.S. central bankers are continually trying to push this line of propaganda, and it really isn't working. And how can we tell it's not working? Well, what they've done was the United States decided that they're not going to purchase any more oil from Nigeria whatsoever. And they stopped importing any crude oil from Nigeria because they're trying to destroy the economy of Nigeria. And we can see they tried with Boko Haram. They tried to get into Nigeria. It didn't work. They're trying to use other methods of getting in there, and now they're just pretty much stopping the purchasing of the oil. And basically, Nigeria, of course, depends on the sale of their oil, keeps the economy going, and right now we could see Nigeria's economy completely implode on itself. But again, they do have very good relations with China, and we'll have to see if China comes to the rescue here and helps pump in billions of dollars to help out what is going on in that area. Now, we understand the riots are continuing in Hong Kong, and we also have evidence that the U.S. is behind this. Joshua Wong has met with many U.S. diplomats, has been wined and dined and paid for, and been coached and brainwashed into creating this umbrella revolution. But it looks like the student leaders and the Hong Kong government are going to meet and talk about what's going on. Of course, the protesters want one of the government official leaders to resign, and right now they're going to sit down and they're going to have talks and see if they can iron out this problem at this time. Now, of course, the United States government, central bankers don't want this to be going down this path. They want a huge, pretty much big riot type of thing with everything getting out of control, because as we know, the whole BRIC nation type of structure goes live, I think, in January of 2015, and they would love to completely destroy China right now, replace the government, and break up the BRIC nations before any of this goes live, because this is a direct threat to the central bankers, and this is why they're trying so hard to maneuver this right now. Now, as we know, Ukraine still hasn't paid for their natural gas bill to Russia, and they are not receiving any gas at this time, and we see many, many countries trying to do a reverse flow into Ukraine to bring them up to snuff where they need to be for this winter. And we're starting to see that a lot of countries like Poland, Slovakia, Germany, Austria, Romania, and Italy have separately reported on declines in Russian gas supplies, and Russia is out there saying, yes, we understand this because there's a lot of reverse pumping going on, and they're seeing this with Slovakia, they're seeing it with the Czech Republic, and they're all trying to do reverse pumping to flow this natural gas into Ukraine to help them out. And they're saying this is taking a toll on the system, and this is why we're seeing a slowdown and a decline in Russian gas supplies to all these countries, and they're telling them to stop doing this. But again, they're trying to help out Ukraine. They're going to continue to do this, and they're going to make it look like that Russia is slowing down the supply. Now, they might have to pretty much push the amount of natural gas going to these countries. They might have to lower it because of the reverse pumping, because who knows what kind of effect it has on the pipe system. Now, it looks like U.S., Poland, Ukraine are refusing to take part in an international contact group meeting in Geneva, where Russia is going to meet and talk about peace and talk about what's been going on. And it seems right now that U.S., Poland, Ukraine, they're not going. And Russia is out there saying, well, this completely shows, which countries want peace and which countries don't want peace, because they're not even willing to show up and talk about what has been going on. Now, in my other report, I talked about Russia, Iran, and a lot of the countries around the Caspian Sea, where they were getting together to create a free trade route right there. And what we're seeing also in that area is that these countries, Iran, Russia, Kazakhstan, which border the Caspian Sea, they're going to lock out NATO. They do not want any foreign military presence in the sea whatsoever, because you can see what's going on right now. Each country and each groups of country that are working together, they are getting prepared for what is coming. And that is World War III. And you can see all military assets are being moved into strategic locations. Russia has been working with other countries to maneuver a way to keep NATO out of certain areas. And we can see this is continually happening, and we can see that each one of these countries are getting prepared for what is coming. Now, what's very interesting, before any country like the UK, the United States, gets into war of any type, like we've seen with the Islamic State, with Al-Qaeda, with Iran, with Iraq, with Syria, there are always 5 steps the governments like to use. And we have to remember these, because this is their playbook on what they do. Step 1, what they do is they highlight atrocities. If you are claiming the moral high ground, the first thing you do is to show that your adversary is deranged, evil, and this is exactly what they do. Step 2, then they communicate moral obligation. Having established their terrible circumstances, it is necessary to demonstrate the moral certainty of the mission and how we have to stop this and we have to go after them. Step 3, they deny enemies humanity. We are facing an evil against which the whole world must unite, and as ever in the cause of freedom, democracy, and justice. Step 4, they say intervention is for the people. We're doing it for the people of that country. And we can see that's not true, because the United States central bankers are in Syria, they are bombing, and they're killing civilians. So are they really doing it for the people? No, they're not. Step 5, raise the threat to national security. If a government can also illustrate that this is faraway evil regime constitutes a threat to national security, the danger becomes localized. And if you look at all the situations that we have, they always follow these same 5 steps to convince us of what we need to do. And the more we're aware of this, the more we can stop it to say, oh, we know what your step 2 is going to be. We know what step 3 is going to be. And we see it every single time. Look back to 9/11. Look back to the Islamic State right now. They follow the same path each time. Now, we understand in Libya, the people in Libya have taken back their country, and now France is pretty much setting up a base in northern Niger as part of an operation aimed at stopping the people inside of Libya. They're approaching the edge of Libya right now, and they're trying to surround the country. They're bringing in about 3,000 French troops, and they're operating out of Mali, out of Niger, and Chad. And these are countries that are straddling the vast arid Sahel band with the aim of stamping out the Islamist fighters, which is the people of Libya, across the region. So they realize they're going to need to get into Libya, and it looks like they're prepping to do this. They're surrounding the country. We also have those aerial bombings, which no one knows where they're coming from. Of course we do. It's the United States central bankers. And we see they're eventually going to have to go into these countries to try to take them back, and it looks like they are definitely prepping for that. Now, it looks like the United States was going to sell the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter to Iraq, but this deal has been stalled. It seems the official said the Baghdad government has failed to sign a letter of notification for the U.S. sale of 24 Apaches. Iraq has sought to compensate for the absence of the Apaches with Russian combat platforms, and they bought Su-25 fighters, Mi 35 attack helicopters, and they're being delivered in July and August, which they've already done, and they have another shipment coming in September. And they're saying that pretty much the U.S. just went ahead and they let this offer expire. They really didn't follow up on it. And right now, the U.S. Ambassador Luckman Faley blamed Congress and the administration of President Barack Obama for the delay in the program. Now, what's very interesting, I'm wondering if they're not delivering the AH-64 Apache attack helicopters to Iraq, because what we're having here is a buildup of the tribes inside of Iraq pushing to take over the country. We've seen it in Yemen, we see it in Lebanon, we see it in Libya. The same thing is happening in Iraq. And of course, the United States central bankers, Israel, UK, also intermixed the Islamic State, which is a very small group. The rest that they're bombing is the tribes, the people trying to take back Iraq. And this is why all the forces are coming in to bomb them. They're actually not really bombing the Islamic State. This is just the excuse to get in there. They're actually bombing the people who are rising up saying we want our country back. Now, it looks like Turkey's parliament approved a motion Thursday that gives the government new powers to launch military incursions into Syria and Iraq, and to allow foreign forces to use its territory for possible operations against the Islamic State. And they're setting this up to go into Syria to get Assad. This has nothing to do with the Islamic State whatsoever. And the measures that Turkey would take after the motion was approved, the defense minister said that they have no immediate steps right now. Pretty much they approved the operation into Iraq, but we're going to hold off right now, and we're going to wait until we are needed to go in and get Assad. And basically the motion prepares for legal ground for possible interventions, but it is too early to say what those interventions will be, and we know exactly what they will be. They're going to go in and try to get Assad, especially when they try to completely weaken the infrastructure of Syria, drive the Islamic State towards Assad, keep the bombing up, bring boots on the ground, have all the other nations in place like Australia, like France, like UK, bringing more and more military assets into the region, bringing troops into Iraq, because we understand the tribes are rising up there. They're not there to get the Islamic State. They're using this as an excuse. All these people used to be called Al-Qaeda. Now they're just switching it over and calling them the Islamic State. The same thing is happening in Libya, Lebanon, and Yemen, and we can see it is totally getting out of control, and they realize they are definitely losing the fight right now. Now, it looks like the U.S. would love to use Georgia as a training ground for the Syrian opposition. Russia is out there saying this is a terrible idea to do this. Moscow noted recent media reports about plans to create a U.S. training camp for Syrian opposition fighters in Georgia, and they're saying that this will damage the security in the South Caucasus area, and they're saying that this is not a good idea right now. Now, it looks like the United States plans to sell the arms to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates amid the U.S. led airstrikes campaign. What they're doing is Saudi Arabia is going to be buying the Patriot missile batteries worth about $1.75 billion, as well as $900 million worth of long-range artillery to the United Arab Emirates. And the agency also said that selling 12 high-mobility artillery rocket systems launchers to the UAE would improve the UAE's capability to meet current and future threats. So all these nations around the area are getting prepped and ready because they realize this war is going to go full-fledged into each one of these countries, and they need a way to protect themselves. And we can see this is exactly what is going on. Now, it looks like the Syrian opposition, the moderate opposition, went out and bombed a school in Homs, and it looks like they killed 33 children in this, and all the indications have been compiled so far confirm that the masterminds and perpetrators of this crime are affiliated to terrorist organizations that some Western countries and their pawns in the region like to call moderate opposition. And we know for a fact that the moderate opposition is not moderate whatsoever. They have paid mercenaries in there. They have the Al-Qaeda terrorists, the Islamic State terrorists in there. And they're just a bunch of terrorists. And you can see from the past, they don't care if they kill civilians. They don't care if they kill children. They don't care if they rip out hearts of soldiers. These people are being controlled by the United States, UK, Israel, and their mission is to take out Assad. And whatever else they do, the United States does not care whatsoever. They don't care what they do to the people there. Just like the bombing in Syria right now, the United States government could care less about killing civilians. And you can see how much they value life as they do this. Now it looks like the House Intel chief, Mike Rogers, he wants to increase cyber attacks against Russia. He wants to get them before they get us. I don't think we are using all of our cyber capabilities to disrupt actors in Russia targeting U.S. interests. Rogers cited attacks out of Russia on the U.S. financial sector, specifically J.P. Morgan Chase in August, is an example of a nation-states targeting U.S. companies and financial interests, and we cannot let this continue. We need to get them before they get us, and he thinks we have the ability to go out and do this. Well, the United States has been doing this quite often. This is nothing new here, and we also know that the attacks that were on the financial sector were not from Russia. They were most likely from an inside job, because we're finding out that all of this is being ginned up by the United States central bankers to create this false flag, to make us think that it's other countries, other groups that are destroying our economy, that are attacking the U.S. to bring us into war. And we can see this is exactly what they're planning. They are creating the atmosphere for this, and we have many things going on. Just think about what has been going on right now. I was sitting down and I was just thinking that we have the issues in Ukraine. We have the issues in the Middle East, where the United States armed forces are headed towards Iraq. Soldiers are headed towards Iraq. We are bombing inside Syria. French and other countries are getting ramped up in military assets to go into Libya, Yemen, and Lebanon. In Africa right now, troops are being brought into the West African region. We have an Ebola breakout in West Africa. We have one case now here in the United States, or two cases in the United States, with many other possibilities. Think about all of this that's going on right now. And we're having cyber attacks against the financial sector, and they're getting prepared for a false flag event. So you can see all of this is starting to really ramp up, and we can see that all of this is being prepared for this major collapse in the economy. And when we look at the economy, it is completely falling apart. Nothing is what the president says it is. Of course, as we know, it is always the opposite of what our government officials say. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.